Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to see you, so many of you here. And our team worked really hard and put a lot of passion and love to make this event special. And I really hope that you will enjoy it. You will enjoy these 2 days of conference, great speeches, inspiring stories, B2B meetings, and of course, networking, and pitch battle. And as today, this stage is dedicated for startup journey, we will talk about idea, command, all the main essential things that you should think about when developing your startup. I would like to invite on stage our founders of Lithuanian Startup Stars. Take your seat.
Hi there.
Andrius Šlimas, I will introduce you. Okay?
All right, thank you.
Andrius Šlimas, founder of Oberlo. Tomas, Okmanas, Tesonet. Martynas, founder of Trafi. And Daumantas, our fintech star, TransferGo. We are not going to discuss some very serious things. I just wanted to talk with you guys, how you succeeded, how was your journey to success. And let's start from the idea. I know that maybe none of you would say that it was your first idea that succeeded. So, Tomas, maybe you will start how you came up with the... Okay, we can start with Andrius. We can start with Andrius. How you came up with the idea of Oberlo?
So you're right that I think there are usually a lot of ideas that are being tested out. So it's very rarely that you start with the first one and the first one succeeds. So I think, like, it took us probably 7-8 years to go to the stage of Oberlo, and everything that we did before that was leading to Oberlo. So we were a lot in the e-commerce business. We had like 6 or 7 e-commerce stores that didn't work out. We had one which was successful. We had marketing agency. We had software development agency. We had, when we launched Oberlo, in parallel we launched 3 other applications for e-commerce. So I think a lot of times it's just opportunity spotting, and for you it's important to be like constantly pushing, constantly doing a lot of things, being super open-minded and like just spotting the opportunities coming your way. And again, for us, Oberlo was one of the things that we created for ourselves to optimize our business. And matter of fact is that before that, another app or another solution was more successful, and we were thinking that that other thing will be the thing, and then Oberlo picked up. So for us, it was a lot of experimentation over a long period of time, and one just picked up.
Yeah, for us, very very similar. So we've counted to date that we did around 34 projects until we found the real one, right? So we started and doing some small outsourcing projects, some small websites, designs. Everyone I think went through this. And the beauty of the tech startups and the tech community, that we changed the name of failure to pivot, right? So there's no failure anymore. We just pivot if something doesn't work, right? So and generally speaking, you cannot fail if you just stop. So if you don't stop. So what I'm saying is that if you pivot and pivot and pivot, it's gonna come because you learn the lesson from one or another, and then the dots connect. So I think it's really, really important just not to stop doing this. Still believe that you can find it. Even now, I think that we pretty know many things how to do right, and still, made a lot of mistakes, and we, saw some challenges. But even now, we still, if we launch some new idea, not 100% it always works, right? But you need to kill it fast. You need to understand that it doesn't work, and then just release it. Don't worry about it, and just do the next thing. So it was a long journey for us. It took us from 2008 to 2012 until we unlocked this. I think it's just the power of not giving up that what works.
I think in tech it's called a successful discovery of something that doesn't work, right?
Very nice words, yeah.
Yeah, in our case, everything started in 2006, I think, when one of the co-founders graduated from MIT and came back to Lithuania and started to write the route search algorithms, right? So since then, everything changed probably like 4 or 5 times, not 30 maybe-ish, but it was still a lot of discoveries, and we went from the B2C application, as even lots of you might know that Trafi is an app, right? But we went from an app, we went to a B2B, we went from a B2B again to an app, and we went again from an app to a B2B. So it was loads of changes and pivots, as the folks have said. And I think the most important one was, I would also agree, to learn very, very fast, right? I mean, to just see that something doesn't work. So yeah, of course, you need to kind of try and make it work, right? But you need to also understand that there is this thin line where you need to stop trying and you need to go on to the next one. So I think finding that thin line is also very important and a key, at least it was for us. And then you just grind and hustle until it works out. And that's what was happening to us when we figured that we are good at the software, we were always good at technology, and we need to do software and technology, and we don't need to kid ourselves that we are good at something else. So effectively, that's what we have done. Currently, you know, we are licensing software to really, really big companies, from Apple to Google to Lyft to VW Group, and then so on and so forth. And we came from an app to a software licensing business, so it was a fairly good journey.
Yeah, so 1, 2. Yeah, so for us, it took 2 businesses to figure out what we need to learn. I think the first business was when we really discovered the problem with cross-border payments. The second, and we failed at that. The second business was when we made our network and really knew how to build companies, but also failed. And the third company was we learned the lessons of how important founder teams are, how important the right investors are, how important it is to be close to the client. And one guy told me, like, back in the day, I still remember that, he said, like, people are really bad at evaluating the best and worst case scenarios of what will happen. We play it in our heads that if we fail, the world will collapse, or if we succeed, you will be the happiest person in the world. Probably none of these are true. Probably if you fail, the worst thing that will happen, you probably have to sleep on your mom's couch for a bit and then do another thing, and that's really the worst thing that will happen. The best thing, you know, I've been through tough times, now we're better times. I'd say my happiness levels have been quite similar because you derive happiness from other things. This is more about satisfaction and everything else. So even when you're doing well, it's not as well as you imagine. So this brings certain wisdom when you think about and manage your risk. And that's why I advise to all the young guys who are maybe afraid, or, you know, there's nothing to be afraid, because the worst case is not the worst case that you imagine. It's just in your head. And pivoting for us and failures, we still do failures now, and a lot of them, but the pattern that I see is that we only fail once we stop listening to our clients and start imagining things in our minds and heads and how we perceive the world. But all the projects that were successful with us, and started as a remittance company, now we're going to platform for SMEs, for even banks to process payments. So once we follow the client, things work. Once we stop doing that, then failures happen. So again, follow the client. That's my learning, and don't be afraid, because the worst case is not really the worst case.
Great. You all mentioned failures, pivoting, changes, and that's the main word of this year's Startup Fair, changes. So what changes you had to go through as growing from 0 company to 600, 700 employees right now in Tesonet, 150 TransferGo, yeah, and changes when you sell your company and you work with a Shopify. So maybe you have some interesting examples of changes what you had to go through.
So obviously one of the greatest change for us was when we you know, when we were a startup and we joined a slightly larger startup of 5,000 people. So that is a little bit of a change. But I think it's just important to, like, I mean, things sometimes, like severe things sometimes happens, and you know, as the guys already said, like you still survive that, or if you don't survive, you move on. But I think it's just, you have to get comfortable with change in general, because like everything is changing every single, you know, week or a month. So you go from, you know, 2 employees to 5 employees, it changes. You go to 10 employees, it changes. You raise money, it changes. The market is constantly changing. So it's just like, you know, you have this fallacy of arrival, thinking, okay, you know, I'll fix the stuff and then it's going to be constant at some point in time, and then, you know, things will be nice, and like we'll set up everything and everything will be going. But like, it's just impossible. It's always changing, and you come there and then there's just a bunch of new, you know, not necessarily problems, but challenges that you have to do. So I think for me, the more of like one big event, and there were a couple of like larger scope changes, but it's just like every single thing is changing all of the time, internally, externally, in your head, in your mood. Like it's you know, there's only one constant thing, which is change. So I think it's just important to get completely comfortable with that, and not wait for the times when things stop changing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that we live in a world in terms of speed and tech community that changes the default behavior that we have. If we would stop changing, I think it would take at least, 6 or 12 months, and you would be behind the competition. So change is a constant, thing that we need to, that we have every day. But what I would address that, especially here in Lithuania, and Lithuanians, we have to have our, mindset changed. So this is the most important thing that we try to address this in terms of in our company and with the guys and. We always somehow think that we're in a small country in Lithuania that, someone there in Silicon Valley knows better than us. They're smarter, they have some kind of a new technology, they're using AI. but actually what they're doing, they're just, they know how to speak, with the buzzwords, and actually they live in a very comfortable, very comfortable life, right? They have huge access to capital, they have huge network capabilities, and we're really afraid that, they know better, we wouldn't even try. I can tell you for sure that, we landed customers like, top 500, Fortune 500 companies from Lithuania, and not even flying there, through emails and Skype. Because, we never gave up. You email them, they don't respond. You LinkedIn them, then you go on to Facebook, then you find the number, you call them. Then you call their wives, right, if they don't respond, because
and then they call you.
they call you. But no is also an answer. So, and in Lithuania, we all speak English well. We're hard workers, right? We know technology. Of course, it's tricky with network, with probably global sales footprint in that sense. But now we have access to capital. Now we have really smart people, and even we have more flights into Lithuania. So we see more and more foreign companies coming in. Yesterday I had a visitor from the US. It's a big payment company, 500 people. The CEO came to visit us in Lithuania, and that's new normal, new standards. So we shouldn't really change that we're trying to push in in our company. That global scale is here at our hands. Is the power, of no borders, and that we really can deliver from a small country, Lithuania, especially from a small country in Lithuania, because we're still humble and we want to, crack this down. So I think that the most important thing is to change the mindset for everyone here.
I'll start crying.
Yeah, I would double down on what Tomas said about the change here, because and we should embrace that change. We should appreciate that we can change, right? I mean, I think one of the most important assets of a small company and a small country that you can actually change, which makes you unique, right? And also, as I said, you shouldn't be afraid of approach people, right? In US, in Silicon Valley. I mean, we landed Apple as our first B2B client without even seeing them also. Through the emails, through the LinkedIn, I needed to probably ping them like 10 different people, maybe more, from Apple, since one replied, who connected then to another one, and then another one connected with another one, and then the deal happened, right? And the people are asking like, how could you do that? You just go and hustle, you just go and write this stuff. As Tomas said, just go and knock the door. But again, coming back to a change a little bit, this is such an important, I think, asset of ours, because when you work with the big dinosaurs, right, even if you're working with the big Silicon Valley guys, I mean, they can't change as fast as you can, and therefore you can win. Therefore, they're buying the software from you, or they're buying the products from you, or whatever you're doing, because you're faster, because you're more agile, because you're maybe 1 or 2 steps ahead of these guys, because they have corporate structures, right? They have big, slow processes, even though they are big names, and they claim in the media and they claim in the world, and we have a perception of them that they are super fast and agile and techy, but they're not. And that's the answer. And that's why, for example, they're buying tech from other guys like us or like the other colleagues. So I think the change we should embrace, we should appreciate that, and we should use it as our one of the biggest advantage, because that's the speed, and because that's kind of in a parallel word to the change, right? The speed is one of the most important, I think aspects in a startup.
Yeah. So I have a privilege of seeing it from the outside a bit. I spend most of my days in London. That's where the wife is. That's where I spend most of my time. But that really presents me a perspective of how much Lithuania, Vilnius has changed over the last 5 years. Whenever I fly down here, oh my God, everyone's on scooters. They weren't on scooters like last time when I was here, right? We are an early adopter market more than we can imagine. We try new things all the time, right? And I saw like people above 55 on those scooters enjoying their rides with no problem, that we have that in us. And the country has changed, and we need to appreciate that the reality right now that Lithuania is perceived as a go-to place. Yes, there are exceptions, but more than not, Lithuania is now, it's interesting, people are coming here, and we should no longer think of us as inferior in any way, because that's only in our minds. And gentlemen, what they're doing, they're just leveraging that new reality faster than other people, but it's all available for everyone to do the same thing. I think from the change perspective, looking at the company itself, we try to manage change by looking at our recruitment in a certain way. So what I learned maybe in the last 2-3 years, how important this thing called stage experience is, like when you hire senior people, when you hire very expensive people that you need to scale your organization, the main thing that we're looking for is, have they gone through building a company from 150 to 300 people. That's, for example, right now is the main thing, because they know how to manage that change. And that specific change management skill is very different from when you've gone from 300 to 700. So sometimes you can manage change in your organization by bringing in talent who have seen that. So you don't have to do it on your own. And think about that, because now people are coming to Lithuania and they work here. We just hired, I think, 3 people who are relocating from Berlin, from UK, international, so gonna be living here in Lithuania. Of course, females have helped us, and the Lithuanian brides are helping a lot to bring in international talent. I thank them for that wholeheartedly. We're with you, thank you. But it also shows that now Germans are okay to live in Lithuania, because it's pretty cool, it's convenient, it's much less hassle than London. Think about that change. Think about 5 years or 10 years ago, who thought that could happen? So just realize the new reality and just leverage and use it as much as you can, because all of these big names are just one call away. Or there may be a Lithuanian guy there who is doing some of the BD, if you're like, because we're scattered everywhere. So leverage that and use it for change.
Great. What if we talk about Lithuanian startup ecosystem? As last year we had a lot of changes. Lithuanian Business Angel Network was launched. At the moment we have like 7 venture capital funds. I think when you all started it was a little bit different story. Do you see those changes, how they impact your startup life?
Well, I think I just want to add to what they were saying. I think the change is absolutely massive and immense, and where we were 5-7 years ago and where we are right now, like if we keep that, if we extrapolate that growth, man, it's going to be way more than Silicon Valley, I think, one day. So I think it's just the country of hustlers, and what we have in our DNA, or I guess the whole region, is we find we find these cracks, we find our way, we go and do that. And like I admire these our people, our entrepreneurs, and how much they do. And now, like, you know, I think, you know, more than, 5 years ago, if you think about startup, you think about Vinted, and now you meet people you've never heard of, and their results are like, man, like, this is crazy. How can you do that? Like, I never, like, we met 3 years ago, and I thought this is some foreign company who came in here, and I was telling you this, and now like 700 people. How can you do that from here? And so, yeah, access to capital, even our acquisition, you know, like, we were trying to do the restructure and move to US because we thought that will help us raise capital, that will make us a more attractive, you know, acquisition target. And like before we even started, we had investors, we had acquisition offers. We thought that Shopify will, you know, do the restructuring, move away from Lithuania. Absolutely not. They are completely fine. So I think the ecosystem is maturing, is already mature. Capital is here. Talents are coming in. I think the only thing that we might be lacking a little bit is what I already mentioned, a little bit of a diversity. Like we need, you know, more diversity of thought. We need more people from outside because sometimes thinking one directional is also not ideal. But other than that, it's just what a country to be, right? To be in.
For sure. I would add a couple more things. Hope there's not many people from technology centers or banks here because I can get into trouble here. But you know, why all these technology companies and banks are coming in to come to Lithuania to open these centers? You know, they don't even Barclays. They don't even have a bank here. They just opened it because we're very hard workers and and that's it. But basically, guys, you have the power and you have, the mind to actually run your own startup. And the idea is that the access to capital is now huge. 7 VC funds from seed, early stage, late stage, wherever. There's really plenty of, capital. Look at Israel. They do not, accept, Tel Aviv does not accept technology centers. What do? They start Waze, then they sell it to Google, and that's it. Google has an office in Israel, right? And they do it with all of the startups. The same with you guys, right? You did what you were just saying, right? They did an amazing startup, and then they were bought by Shopify, and Shopify is actually expanding here, right? And it's not a technology center. It's a product. You're running business. You have knowledge. You have access to the internal resources of Shopify, and it's crazy. So what I'm trying to say here is that I know that's pretty comfortable sometimes to go and work as a developer for a good salary in a very nice technology center. But think, what's the upside if you don't, and what you can get if you just go out and try, do the startup. All the VCs here are looking where to put the money. They're not looking how to get the money. They have the money. You're looking where to put them. Just create an idea. If not one, maybe 10, and it's going to work out. So, the time is now. I think we live in the best time that's ever been. And don't miss this opportunity. This is, why.
Thank you, Tomas. You're such a great ambassador of Startup Lithuania, because one of our goals is to try to show those people who work in those comfortable centers, technological, to develop their own startups. So great speech, Martynas.
And I think one of the important bits also to add here is how can we attract the talents back to Lithuania, right? I mean, look, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, everybody was more or less going out of here, right? And I think the trend is changing. The trend is changing completely because at least we seeing, and I know the other companies and other startups are seeing the people are actually coming back. They go there, they have a few years of international experience in a really good, maybe massive companies, Facebook, Google's, whatever, or they finish the top unis, right? I mean, in the US or in the UK, and they really. These young people, they really want to go back after some time. I haven't met one person who said, this is it, completely for the rest of my life, I'm gonna stay in US or in UK or whatever. I really want to come back at some point. That's what, at least for me, everybody said. And we tried that. We, for example, made the hackathon a year ago, and we invited all of the Cambridge and Oxford Lithuanian students who basically studied computer science and other aspects there. And I think we've got 14 of them coming over there, and every single one of them said, we're starting to see the change in Lithuania, and we're starting to see the startups, the technology companies, and other companies where it's interesting to work there. It's interesting to come back. The salaries are coming over to a pretty good standards as well, you know. And I think that change and that pattern we're going to see more and more, and we should embrace in the startup Lithuania. And I think if we're talking about the Lithuanian ecosystem, the government and all the relevant institutions should, you know, do more and more and more jobs to try and bring these people home because they want to come home, and we just sometimes need to create a little bit of a bridge for them to come back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When are you coming back, Daumantas?
With city airport flight, I'm always here. Yeah, but that's a very good example on how London was connected to Vilnius overnight. I agree with all the positivity here, but I would say a few things that I think that now we have a chance in Lithuania to become one of the most prosperous countries in Europe, because Europe in general is in a bit of a mess. Look at elections, look at people getting elected. We just had the most sane presidential elections in history of our country, right? And that shows something about how we're able to go out and actually build prosperity against the odds, right? But now I think it's important to really have a clearer vision of where this country will be in the next 25 years. And like a longer, because short-term things is not going to work anymore. You need long-term investment in education, in tech education, to revamp our educational system, because if we're lagging behind every year when we don't do that, because the talent gap is becoming larger and larger. And very soon, with all these companies coming in, they will see there is shortage of talent because it's just not enough to sustain the ecosystem. I think that we need to definitely bring in international angel investors, because the non-domiciles have built London to be the tech hub that it is, right? And sometimes companies are not ready to go VC. They need someone a bit earlier. And you know, Lithuania has a limited pool of wealthy people. So again, bringing in people from the region, give them tax incentives so you would be here. That could be a very interesting next step. And finally, I think reforming the tax regime to make sure that we really bring people from abroad to set up shops here, but very clearly prioritize IP building versus IP servicing. Mm-hmm. Because we're not going to build prosperity by being a service country. And Barclays and Western Unions of this world, they're great. They have developed a new generation of talent, but they will come here, they will see that it's not low cost, and they will leave. And that's the reality. But if you come here for the right reasons, if you're Uber who came here to build their IP or build their databases, they will stay and they will build here, because that's what we're strong at. And I think that's a strategic choice we have to make, not implicitly but explicitly. It should be written somewhere, very visible and very clear where we're going and where we're not going. I think that will be very important for the next 20 years to get to where we need to get.
Great. And let's go back to your personal experience as we move to very global things, Lithuania ecosystem, failures. Like, it's always very interesting to hear about other failures and lessons that you've learned.
So you want to hear about the failures?
As we don't have this failure toleration and everyone is afraid of failing, we would like to
I think, again, it's just a perception. Like, how can you... how can you achieve something without failing? It's impossible. So it's again more of like just a successful discovery of the thing that doesn't work. And you continuously iterate that. We've failed multiple times. I think, to the point where we thought, okay, like we just have to, give up. It's not working. Like we really had, 6, 7 e-commerce stores, and actually that that failing forced us to think of why are we failing, and then create a model which was dropshipping in our case, which was super lean on capital and super flexible. These failures forced us to come up with a solution which was the answer to these failures. So again, it's just the learning opportunities. I don't think you ever should do that, but as already mentioned, folks here already mentioned, is just super important to know when to stop. Like, I think the real, well, you know, there are failure that you don't start, or the failure that you don't stop and move on when it's necessary. Because sometimes you have this thing, you had all of these hopes, nothing is working, and then you think, no, but like if I stop, then you know, then I'm a failure. But it's not. Like you have to know when to stop, when to pivot. You know, call it whatever you want, but just. And then after some time, you will have such a joy killing a project, I tell you. Like it's initially very difficult because you think that it's the acceptance of the failure, but ultimately it's such a feeling of progress, right? You are doing, and actually at Oberlo, we've been building one program for 2 years, and it was just not working out. And the feeling of working on something which is not working is terribly depressing and very heavy on you and all of the people. And we just forced ourselves to cut it, and like the whole company was working on the project, and we discontinued that, and it just liberates you. Now you're looking for new opportunities, new things. And so, again, like I think it's just a bit dangerous to talk from the failure. It's more of like just a natural progression that, you know, like Facebook, Apple, take any example, they went through a lot of iterations, a lot of things that, you know, didn't work. There's a website about the graveyard of Google projects. There were like probably, you know, 400 projects that were killed. So it's not a failure. It's part of the game.
Yeah, I can tell a real life example what happened to us. So, and how stupid we were. So, you know, we've started maybe 2010. A joint venture together with this digital company called kitoks.com. They were in Lithuania. They were doing, you know, online web pages to, you know, then Omnitel, the kind of, you know, ISPs and others. And we decided that we need to make a product, right? And we decided that we need to make a game. Games were pretty trendy there. We remember those times on Facebook where there was Farmwell, Zynga Poker, and those times. It ran in Flash. And we decided to make a pretty smart game called Wizardia. So it's basically the mechanics were the same as Pokemon, you know, Go, offline connected with online, and it was pretty fun as we assumed. And we started, you know, working on it. We worked for a year and a half, and there was everyone wanted to do it in perfection. They were tailoring the swords in 5 times how the sword's gonna look. Who cares about the sword, right? But that doesn't end. Now then we went after a year and a half, somehow I managed to secure a deal with EA Games. EA Games is the biggest publisher, you know, in the world in terms of gaming, and they have an arm called Chilingo, based in the UK, and they've been behind the Angry Birds. So super house of, you know, the platform distribution, and it was wow, we thought it's done, right? Job is done. And we signed a contract, exclusivity contract, that they're going to release our game and publish through their, you know, all the other games that they have, including Angry Birds and everything. And when they looked after the contract into this our game, which was really, you know, tailored and really made it that we would love it, said, it's too cool, it's too, you know, serious, let's try to more explosions here, make it with more explosions, more colors, it's going to be more fun. We say, okay, they probably know better than us, right? Who are we here, right? And we've been, and we invested another 9 months into, you know, redoing the design and in those explosions that they wanted us to do. After 9 months, they said, okay, so we're going to start in Canada or Australia. These countries are very still, you know, they have the same engagement and behavior as the US, but way cheaper to test because, you know, the market is not as big as in the US. They started in Canada for 2 weeks, said, can you make more explosions here and more fancy stuff there? And we did another 3 months, and then they tested, said, nah, it doesn't work, sorry guys, bye. And then we were sitting, and then we said, okay, so we launched the game on Flash on Facebook, but then Facebook discontinued Flash, so in the same month. So it was a huge fun. We've been, so we learned our lessons the hard way. You cannot make a project for a year and a half. You need to see whether the traction gets live in the next, 3 to 6 months, I think. If there is no traction, drop it and do the next one. And, even though there is super big names, super big advisors, super big whatever, feel your guts whether this is right or wrong, double check, triple check, don't go all in. Of course, just, feel what's best for your company and for the product because you know better rather than the big companies outside. So this is the field that we had. Now we have, a very good mindset of moving super fast, killing fast. So I think this is the crucial part in this DNA that we have.
I can see that we are running out of
Yeah.
time. So
Sorry.
if you have like quick examples of failures or mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, we were probably lucky enough not to have like a really fatal, fails. Though we were very, very close to just go completely bust at one point, when we thought that Facebook marketing is the best choice for us to grow the company. And we probably spent, I would say, the VCs wouldn't be happy, but we spent probably like $300,000-$400,000 at some point, just trying to ramp up everything and numbers and stuff. And after a few months, it didn't stick. I mean, the churn was so high, right? Retention was so crap. And then we were like, okay, so we are 6 months away from going bust. We need to go and raise the money. And then this is not happening fast, right? I mean, so we were pretty lucky enough that we had this pretty interesting curve, going to up and to the right. But we have 1 month left until it would be like completely over. We already had like a super small salaries. We were like 8 people, and then we figured, and we raised the round, which was about $6 million in Series A. Sometimes you are very, very, very lucky also. And not that we would take the credit that we knew how to do that. It was totally our controlled situation. It was out of control completely, and it was pretty lucky. And then one failure very quickly was about expanding markets. So whenever you want to expand into new geographies, we, for example, also had one idea. We will go towards Southeast Asia, completely blow this out. It's going to be the best product there for Trafi and the best market there for Trafi. We hired people in Singapore. We hired people in offices we opened in India, in Jakarta, in Indonesia, and it was so hard to manage everything from Lithuania because we sort of wanted to manage everything from here. And in half a year, we needed to fire everything, fire everyone, and close all these offices. And that was a pretty huge learning and pretty bad feeling to do that because we didn't do our homework beforehand. So a couple of those failures, I could go on, but as we don't have too much time, maybe I'll give you the word.
I had all of these, so I'm not going to repeat. But for me, the failures that delay the business the most, and I'm talking years, is people. Wrong people.
Yeah, that's true.
Either too senior or too junior are equally bad, right? And when you start, you look at these brands, oh my God, senior vice president at Visa, how great could this person be? And it's a disaster. Because they're used to running 1,000 people political organization, not building a scalable, fast startup. And they also bring the culture in that is slow, failure intolerant, perfectionist, all the opposites of what you need to do. And the problem is that it delays your company by a year when you do that. Because if you don't have a well-stacked senior management team and you have goals, you can't really deliver them because you can't really run without your shoes tied properly. And you try and you fail, and that can be very cancerous to the culture. So my learnings from that were hire slow, fire fast. And also have a measuring stick on how you evaluate people, not based on their brands previously, but based on what have they done in the last 3 weeks, or first month, first 2 months of joining. People who are good, they deliver value week 1. And that value can be small, can be big, and they never come to you with excuses, they come with you with solutions. And that's what I saw very early, and look for these patterns, because usually people just do more of the pattern that you see early. And that was really a big learning. So yeah.
I would add a little bit on top of that. The track record is everything. How can you actually define the person, right? I mean, and track record, exactly as Tomas said, what have they done? What have they achieved in the different companies, right? Not because of their background or nice names, VP at Google, director at Facebook, this and that at Apple. You're still kind of looking for those CVs and you're being impressed. I'm still impressed today by looking at some of these CVs, right? But you need to pinch yourself and okay, you need to really, really look at what these people have done. And one of the other things which I believe is underestimated, is that we don't do reference checking that often. And it's maybe I wouldn't call anyone. The whole process of interviews went really well, and I'll just hire the person. Do the reference checking. Every time, 2 reference checks, 3 reference checks from different backgrounds. It will really open some of the eyes, for you.
Yeah, and just last point on hiring, which I can't stress enough, is people who are good in interviews, they will go to fine detail on how they succeeded or failed in different projects. And they will be able to tell you what was it raining on that day when they failed that project. Find those details, because this means they've actually done it and they know what will happen here. And I think that's very important. And do official and unofficial reference checks. So they will give you their references, that's fine. Yeah. But within your network, you usually can find people who have worked with them, who are not their references, but they will tell you actually the nitty-gritty stuff of what you need to know. So that's critical to not statement.
Yeah. Great. So thanks a lot. I think we've heard a lot of experience, some advices. These guys will be here. You can catch them up if you have some personal questions.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Thank you.
You are our hope.
Yeah.